Hello, everyone. We are here with Amanda, and I am so looking forward to hearing more about your work in fear. And I've always struggled with this knowing whether something is fear or intuition, because it's like I don't want to give in to fear. Like, I don't want to be making decisions from fear, but what if that's my gut speaking? So, we're going to talk about that. Very excited. But I would love to hear first more about how you got into what you're doing now.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So, I actually have a fitness background. I went to school for exercise science, kinesiology, and I worked as a personal trainer for 15 years. And 3 years ago, 6 months before a worldwide pandemic, I opened up my own gym. Perfect timing. And when I had to close down, I had to figure out a way to stay operational online. So I started offering more nutrition coaching services to my clients because that was something I could do virtually much easier. And so I dove into nutrition sciences and I wanted to become as adept as possible to be able to help my clients in this way. And I started to find something very interesting. We didn't talk very much about food in these sessions. We talked a lot about what their fears were, what they were going through in their lives, what was causing them anxiety, relationships that they were dealing with in their life that were causing them stress. And I started to notice a correlation between how they were feeling in their lives emotionally and how food was being used to cope with that.
That makes
Because they
sense.
hadn't, yeah, because they hadn't learned how to work through how they were feeling emotionally. So food was the way to do it. And I started to realize that my passion, what I was really passionate about, was the heart of the issue of what was going on here, which was how do you help someone work through feeling better within their body, within their mind, within their soul, in their life, and really getting to the heart of the issue. And so I decided to shed the fitness label altogether and just focus on the work that I was already doing with them. And so I built a new business, which I'm calling Soul Alignment Coaching. That's the main service that I offer. And the way I like to explain what that is we go through life and we're told to check a series of boxes, right? If we check those boxes, then we're going to be happy, we're going to be healthy, and we're going to be financially abundant. And that is go to school, get an education, get a job, build a career, get married, have a family, and ideally in that order.
Right.
Right?
Definitely have heard
And
that before.
right. So we all have to do that in that order. And if we do all those things and we check all those boxes, we're going to be great. And we do all the things and we check all the boxes. And then one day we wake up and we're like, why do I feel so unhappy and unfulfilled in my life? And that becomes a really uncomfortable thought. And so I help people who are feeling that way shift how they feel inside. Most of us don't know what to do with that feeling. And so I help them uncover why they feel that way and then create the shifts internally necessary for them to be able to claim a life that's truly in alignment with who they are, and then take the steps and work through the fear involved in getting there.
I love that. Soul alignment coaching. See, this is the
Yes.
reason why I asked you to come on. I was like, name like that. That is definitely for us over here.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if it's ever been true that you follow that path and then like boom, happiness. This is the equation.
I think it can be. I don't think those things create happiness. I think we find happiness along the way as we're doing things, but I think that we need to start disassembling this notion that we attain happiness outside of ourselves.
Good point.
right? The ability to be happy, happiness is an emotion. We can create it ourselves. We don't have to get it. We can just be it. But I think that that takes a lot of undoing of conditioning. And that's kind of what I started to do for myself. And then the work that I do with my clients as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dig into my primary question. If I'm looking at doing something and my body's going, how do I know if that's like a legit gut reaction or fear trying to keep me small?
Yeah, it's an age-old question, right? Like, what is my fear? What is my intuition? How do I know which one I'm operating from? How do I tell the difference? It's the most common question that I get asked, and it's something that I've had to work through for myself as well. So the way I like to explain it is that fear is a friend. It's not an enemy, and essentially what it's there to do is protect you. It's your friend trying to protect you. And the way I like to explain this is that we have two parts to us, two halves to ourselves. We have our ego side, our ego self, and then we have our soul self. Our ego self is made up of all of the heavier, lower vibrational emotions. That's fear, that's guilt, that's shame, that's lack of self-worth, self-doubt, all of those ickier emotions that we don't like to feel. And then the soul self, that's our intuition. That's that gut feeling that we have sometimes, that sometimes we listen to and sometimes we don't, but always ends up being right. That's our truth. That's our love. It's that side of us. And at some point early in childhood, we all experience feeling one of those heavier, ickier emotions. We experience shame, we experience guilt, we experience fear, and we don't really like that. It's uncomfortable. Right? It's uncomfortable to feel guilt. It's not comfortable to feel shame. And it's a very painful feeling. And so our body develops a defense mechanism in the form of fear, in the form of the alarm bells that fear rings, so that at any point moving forward in your life, if it perceives that you're going to have to relive that emotional experience, it's going to sound the alarm through fear so that you don't have to feel it again. And in a way, that's a good thing, right? It's like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much for trying to protect me. But at the same time, sometimes you want to do things in your life that could potentially make you very happy or help facilitate growth. And the fear response is holding you back from doing that. And so that's when it starts to become a problem. And that's when you want to start to understand how to work through it. And so when the alarm bell sounds, it's going to have a very strong emotional reaction. And this is where I like to start to get into how to differentiate the fear from the intuition. Your ego is full of desperation to get your attention. So it's going to be yelling and screaming at you. And it's going to elicit a lot of physical sensations in your body. And you can start to list them for yourself and start to become aware of what they are, because they're a little different for all of us. It can be tightness in your jaw. It can be pounding in your chest. It can be a tingling sensation all over your body. It can be feeling like a rushed feeling, like an anxious feeling, tightness in your neck, the back of your head, like a headache. These are all signs that you're essentially being triggered emotionally. And this is a fear response. This is an ego response.
Okay.
Your intuition doesn't have to do that. Your intuition doesn't have to convince you of anything. It doesn't have to save you from anything. It's your truth, is what that is. And your truth knows it's true. So it doesn't have to convince you. And so it's just here, right? Like, this is your truth. And the problem is that because it doesn't have to yell and scream, and the ego is screaming at you, it can become difficult to hear your intuition above the yelling and screaming of your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so over time, you have to learn how to ask the right questions to peel away the layers of the ego so that you can hear the intuition underneath. And if you've gone a lifetime without doing that, it's going to take practice to be able to hear your intuition, discern the difference, and then learn to trust it, which is the tricky
Whole other
part.
layer.
Yeah, right? Because if you're not used to trusting yourself, I didn't trust myself for 35 years. So when I
Mm-hmm.
had to relearn that I have the answers, I don't have to assume that everyone knows better than me. It took me time to reframe that for myself and to begin to trust my own intuition. But I'm never wrong, never wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that it comes down to feeling the uncomfortable feelings so that they can be released is the way through. So it's an uncomfortable process, but it's the only way forward. And I can explain what I mean by that if you'd like me to.
Well, I'll say first of all that I think I experienced seeing that difference a little bit over this summer because, as many in my audience know, my husband left his job and we were really in a crossroads trying to figure out, is he going to get another job or is he going to be a stay-at-home dad, which he would really love to do. And we had so much outside pressure about, like, of course he's going to get another job. What are you talking about? And yet it began to feel like in our hearts, we knew that that wasn't the right choice. And so it was very challenging to honor that. But it was like, we feel it. We know that this is the right choice. And we need to be strong against all these outside influences saying that it's not reasonable. So I
Yeah.
think that was good training to help me understand listening to that part of me. But where I run into trouble is, this is a very specific scenario. Okay.
Okay.
So you hear stories such as there was an explosion and the building collapsed, and oh my gosh, my friend was planning to be staying in that building, but for some reason they didn't get on the plane to go on that trip. They just had a gut feeling not to go. So now I use that to not do things because I feel a lot of fear about plane travel and things of that nature. And so if it comes up, I start feeling that feeling, and then I don't know if that's just my fear of plane travel or if, oh no, what if my gut is trying to tell me I'm going to die?
Yeah.
Is that one you
Yeah.
run across?
Yeah. No, can we work through this together?
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
Okay. So I'm getting curious around, are you able to pinpoint what the thoughts are in that moment when you're not sure or you want to go and cancel? You have the thought of canceling the flight. What are the thoughts that are coming up in that moment?
Um, I guess it starts with feeling like this is something that is risky. There
Okay.
is a potential for disaster here.
So if that part of you were to speak right now to you, what would it say? If it was to speak in first person, like, Carolyn, you shouldn't book this plane ticket because.
Shouldn't book this plane ticket because something could go wrong and
Okay,
it's dangerous.
keep
And
going. You're holding back a little bit.
that
So
it does sound like that
it
trying to
does,
keep me safe thing.
Does it sound like that? Or is it screaming at you, don't book this plane ticket. Something's going to happen. You're going to die. This is going to be a bad decision. Does it have that energy behind it? Or
A
is it
little bit. I don't tend to get like super anxiety thoughts,
okay?
thankfully, but it like starts with that fear, and then the fear settles in my stomach, and my stomach goes, that's guts
Okay.
in the stomach. This must be
Okay.
a gut
Okay.
feeling.
So the thought is don't book this plane ticket because something could go wrong. Okay. So what's really interesting is fear speaks in a lot of what ifs, right? Like, what if this happens? Or what if this happens? But this could happen too. And then this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. And then it just starts kind of snowballing. Is it kind of like that? Where you'll have the one thought and that'll lead to another thought and that'll lead to another thought. And then you're like, oh my God, my gut's talking to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're not really sure how to parse apart what all of these thoughts are related to. But it seems like they're leading back to a memory that you have of this one person or situation that you heard about where this one person had a gut reaction that ended up being right. So you're using that as a frame of reference to make your own decisions. So are you listening to your own gut, or are you using a past scenario to dictate a future action? Which one do you think?
I think I'm afraid of being wrong.
Oh, interesting. I am afraid of being wrong. So
Yeah.
that's
I
a
think it's
fear.
like,
What are you afraid of being wrong about?
if I ignore this fear and do it anyway and something goes wrong, then I was a foolish person who didn't listen to their gut, and everybody's going to tell stories about me forever, being like, she should have listened to her intuition.
Okay. So it seems like the underlying fear here is of what others might think about you.
Thought I was past that. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
And that is what's driving this decision to cancel the flight, which is, it's not a fear of death, surprisingly. It's not a fear of being on the plane and then being like, oh, I was wrong, I'm going to die now. It's a thought of being on the plane and then being like, everyone's going to think I'm an idiot. That's
Yeah,
super
exactly.
interesting, isn't it?
Oh, the brain is so
Yeah.
weird. Like,
So
really?
so what we just realized here, it took some digging, but we just realized that the decision is being made out of a fear. I am afraid of what others will think about me. And so if you were to take a moment, put your hand on your heart, close your eyes, take a deep breath. What would your heart tell you in response to this fear? I'm afraid of what others will think about me.
It would say you can't live your life constrained by things like this. If you're wrong, you're wrong, and you die. It happens to everybody.
Okay.
Just keep on putting yourself out there.
How does that energetically feel different from the gut response that you were getting in terms of the plane ticket?
It feels very calm.
Yeah. There's a different energy behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a difference. That is the difference. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, but your intuition will never speak to you through a framework of, of ego, of fear, of self-doubt, of shame. It will never shame you. It will never make you feel afraid. It will always be a warmth and a loving guidance because that's who you are at your core.
Mm.
You are love. You know, you are worth. And so that's what your intuition will feel like and sound like. And it does take practice to differentiate the two. You do have to allow the ego to get it out sometimes. So when we're in a moment of panic or fear or shame or doubt, we get uncomfortable feeling those things and we tend to shut it down. Shut it down, walk away, do something else. And everything is energy, right? I'm energy, you're energy, this computer's energy. Our thoughts and our feelings are also energy. They're just energetic frequencies. And so the fear that you're feeling, it's just energy. That's all it is. But when you don't allow yourself to fully feel it and let it pass through you, it stays in the body. And then it becomes difficult to access the intuition underneath because there's all these layers of other emotions there. And so sometimes it's okay to just like get it out, let it out, allow your fear to yell at you for a few minutes. You can journal about it, allow yourself to feel emotional about it. And then hand on your heart, close your eyes. What's my truth? And that's kind of the simplest way I like to break it down for people. And it works.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to track down that guy from my childhood and say, did you feel a warm sensation?
Well, I think,
or was it a total coincidence?
That's so funny. I think for that person, it was different. I think for that person, they were feeling a strong intuitive nudge. He probably, or she, they probably weren't actively thinking about it. It just appeared and they followed it. And I think that's the difference, is that when we're logically thinking about something, that's not an intuitive nudge. That's an intuitive nudge.
Talk ourselves into getting more and more and more afraid.
Right.
Definitely do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Being a podcast host is the best. I get so much out of it from all my wonderful guests. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a lovely demonstration. So if people want to get in touch with you and come into your world, what's a good place for them to start?
Yeah, I'm very active on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is my name. It's Amanda Lauren Blau. And my last name is B as in Bob, L as in Larry, A-U. You can also find me on Facebook, Amanda Lauren Blau, there as well. Specifically, if your listeners are interested in working through their own fear and intuition, I have a free resource for them. Yeah, if they go to my website, amandalaurenblau.com, under free resources, I have a full video where I take you step by step and coach you through parsing apart your fear and your intuition. So that's something that they can do there. Or I'm also going to be hosting a live workshop in person in Michigan, but also virtually at the same time. And so I'm going to be walking everyone through their own fear and understanding what they're afraid of and working through that to be able to hear their intuition underneath. So if that's something that they're interested in attending, they can send me a DM on Facebook or Instagram, and I can tell them how to register for that as well.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are there any last pieces of wisdom and advice that you would like to leave us with?
I think that learning to hear and understand and trust your intuition is an incredibly powerful and empowering experience. And it does take time. And it's not something that I could have done on my own. I did need a coach to help me too. I am not impervious to that. It's hard to see the forest through the trees for yourself. It's easier to have someone with an outside view, just like I was able to do today with you. I needed somebody to help me with my own fear as well. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but starting to explore that for yourself, it's extremely empowering. And I hope anyone listening really, shows themselves some compassion and patience in that process, because it can take a long time to undo some of that conditioning that was instilled in us throughout our lifetime. Just have patience with yourself, have compassion with yourself, and approach it with a sense of curiosity rather than pressuring yourself to get it right. And
Good one.
I think that will make it more fun and less stressful.
I love it. Very good tips.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, we will say goodbye. Thank you, everybody.